When I first decided to travel to the Philippines, I didn't tell anyone about the strange little experiment I was about to do. To the outside world, I was just another traveler, another foreigner looking to explore a beautiful tropical country. But inside, I was carrying a secret. I wanted to test something that had been eating at me for years. Was love still real in this modern world, or had money replaced everything? You see, back home, I was comfortable. I wasn't a millionaire, but I had enough to never worry about bills, meals, or travel. But over time, I began to notice a pattern. People seemed to treat me differently when they thought I had money. Friends became more generous when I was paying the tab. Strangers became more friendly when I mentioned I had a stable business. And when it came to dating, I couldn't ignore the uncomfortable thought that sometimes people loved what I could provide more than who I actually was. So, I decided to do something radical. I left behind the image of comfort, packed only the basics, dressed down, and boarded a plane to the Philippines. But here's the twist. I planned to pretend I was broke. Not homeless, not desperate, but just an average traveler with almost nothing in my pockets. My mission? To see how people would treat me when they thought I had nothing to give. And secretly, I hoped to discover if love could still exist without money being part of the equation. The first day I landed in Manila, I was nervous. The airport was busy, hot, and full of noise. I had purposely booked the cheapest guest house I could find, far from the big hotels. My clothes were plain, and my bag looked worn out. I wanted to blend in as someone who was just getting by. The first surprise came almost immediately. A taxi driver noticed me struggling to find a bus, and instead of charging me a fortune like I expected, he gave me directions for free and even walked me halfway to the terminal. "Save your money," he said with a smile. "You'll need it more later." That moment stayed with me. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I had money in a hidden account back home. He just helped me because he saw someone in need. The next few days only added to my curiosity. In a small eatery, a woman noticed me counting coins nervously before ordering. I was acting the part, pretending to budget tightly. She came over and placed an extra piece of meat on my plate. "For you, Kuya," she said softly. She didn't even charge me. She simply gave. That night, I sat in my room and thought about how different this was from what I expected. Where I came from, nobody gave anything for free. Here, generosity seemed natural. But the real test came when I started looking for love. I signed up for a few local events and community gatherings. At first, I kept conversations light, about food, culture, and travel. I avoided talking about money, cars, or business. I wanted to see how far relationships could go when wealth wasn't even on the table. That's when I met Laura. She wasn't glamorous in the flashy way social media shows. She was simple, warm, and full of laughter. She asked about my family, my dreams, my favorite foods, not once about what I owned. We walked through night markets together, shared street food, and laughed at silly jokes. The more time I spent with her, the more I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, that I was being seen for me. Weeks went by, and I kept up the act. She thought I was living with very little, yet she still made the effort. One evening when I was short on bus fare, she handed me coins from her own pocket and insisted I keep them. Another time, when I wasn't feeling well, she cooked food and brought it to my guest house. She never once asked for anything in return. That's when my guilt started to build. Because the truth was, I wasn't poor. I had money. I had enough to live comfortably and more. But here she was, treating me with kindness that wasn't based on what I could give her financially. It was pure. It was genuine. And it scared me. I began to wonder what would happen when she learned the truth. Would she feel betrayed? Would she think I was mocking her kindness? Or would she understand why I did this experiment in the first place? One night, as we sat on a bench near Manila Bay, watching the sun dip into the horizon, I decided it was time to tell her. I took a deep breath and confessed everything. That I wasn't broke, that I came to the Philippines not just for travel, but to test if real love still existed in a world obsessed with money. I told her I pretended to be poor to see how people would treat me. Her silence was heavy. For a moment, I thought I had ruined everything. Then she turned to me, her eyes soft but sharp at the same time. "So, all this time, you didn't trust me enough to show me the real you?" she asked. Her words cut deep. She wasn't angry about the money. She wasn't jealous or upset that I had wealth. What hurt her was the lack of trust, the fact that I felt the need to test her heart instead of believing in it from the start. I apologized, genuinely and without excuses. I told her I had been afraid, that in my world money clouded everything, and I just wanted to find someone who loved me for me. She sighed, looked back at the water, and after what felt like hours, she smiled faintly. "You don't need to pretend here," she said. "In the Philippines, love is not measured by money. It's measured by how much you care, how much you give of yourself, not your wallet." That moment broke me in the best way possible. From then on, I stopped pretending. I shared more about who I really was, not in terms of wealth, but in terms of my fears, my hopes, and my heart. And she did the same. We built something genuine, something I hadn't felt in years. I realized that my experiment, as flawed as it was, had shown me the truth, that in the Philippines, people still valued kindness, sincerity, and connection over material things. Over time, I saw this everywhere. Families sharing meals even when they didn't have much, strangers helping each other in the streets, couples holding hands with smiles that didn't need luxury cars or designer clothes. Love was still alive here, and it was beautiful. When I eventually returned home, my perspective on life had changed forever. I no longer looked at relationships with suspicion, but with hope. I no longer thought wealth was the foundation of happiness, but sincerity. Because in the Philippines, I had found something I thought the modern world had lost. Real love that doesn't ask for anything but your heart. And that's the story of how I pretended to be poor in the Philippines, and instead discovered the richest lesson of all.